Gary, good morning. Okay. What I want to cover with you this morning, we'll just ask you all to mute yourselves unless you want to speak.
Mute.
Yeah, mute yourself unless you want to speak. Okay. What I want to cover with you now is the second part of the Mishnah that we were engaging with yesterday. And now this second part needs to be understood properly. Let's have a look together. So if you recall yesterday, we spoke about the importance of resonating with people and understanding that essentially there isn't anything to have an issue with another person. Really, the only thing that finds fault or has issues with people is the egoic membrane that surrounds us. But the inner self essentially is connected and resonates and doesn't really find any issues with people. There's an essential connection that exists, and it's not phased by people, and it's not phased by circumstances. So thus, if an individual finds a state of dissonance with others, then it's an indication that their essential self has not been calibrated to the requisite level. Now, when we come to the second part of the Mishnah, we are going to have to consider, how does this fit in? Seems like a very strange part of the Mishnah. Again, for those that are just joining, we're on the Mishnah in the third Perek, and of Perek Avos. You'll find it in your Sidurim on page 560, and I think it is the 13th Mishnah there. 13th Mishnah. Page 560, 13th Mishnah. It's actually that now we're going on to the 14th Mishnah in the Art Scroll. Now, what's important for you to understand is that in most places, these two Mishnayos are actually grouped together. And what we have to understand as well is Mishnayos follow a certain order. So there's an inextricable link between the teachings, and the person can't just say, oh, these are just a conglomerate of random teachings that the rabbis have decided to place together. There is something unique and extremely valuable and extremely linked between all of these teachings. So now, we've just spoken, or yesterday we spoke about the concept of Ruach HaBriyas Neichayimenu and Ruach HaMokim Neichayimenu. That you need to have both a resonance with people and a resonance with Hashem. And the essential way to resonate with people is to understand what the essential self is inside of us and what the essential self is inside of them. Okay? Now, how does that fit into Rabbi Doisa ben Harkinas, who says the following? Sheina shel Shachris. I'm just asking everyone to be muted unless you want to speak. All right? Unless you want to speak, please mute yourself. Again, we invite everyone to share, but let's just keep the peripheral noise at bay. So, Rabbi Doisa ben Harkinas Omer, Sheina shel Shachris, v'yayin shel Tzarayin, v'sichas hayoladim, v'yeshivas bate knesias shel amei haaretz, moitziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. What does that mean? Sheina shel Shachris means the sleep of the morning. Okay, sleeping in. It's a nice time. Yeah, it's quite a sweet sleep to be able to sleep in. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to that when it comes to the lockdown. But that's one of the things that the Mishnah tells us that actually removes a person from the world. Hectic. I mean, gosh, like, yeah, okay. I thought, yeah, all right, I'm going to sleep in. all right, you know, I might be late to something, or but it removes you from your world. I mean, that's a crazy thing to think about. Then the yayin shel tzaharayim, and the wine of the midday, meaning come home for lunch, or you're at home for lunch, 1 o'clock, and you take out a nice bottle of wine, you know, to finish with your lunch. Or it could be a couple of shots of whiskey, or whatever it is, a nice glass of whiskey, whatever that is. We'll have to try and understand. But yain shel tzarayim, the wine of the midday. Interesting that it doesn't say the morning. You know, in some places in Australia, we had a custom every time a person had a yahrzeit. It would be the custom to bring a bottle of whiskey or a couple of bottles of whiskey and some nash, some food. Then we'll all make a bracha in honor of the departed. And it sometimes would happen every single morning. You know, people at a yahrzeit would be drinking whiskey early in the morning. So I haven't seen this custom yet take place in Cape Town, but it's interesting that it notes specifically the wine of the afternoon. What is that? Takes you out of your world, removes you from your world. Next one is the sichas hayeladim, the chatter of children. What a beautiful thing, the chatter of children. Yeah, there's something very beautiful, very, very innocent, very simple about the chatter of children. But here the Mishnah is saying there's something dangerous in the chatter of children, in the sense that it's able to take you out of your world. Again, that's a really difficult one to understand. What issues do we have with the chatter of children? You know, there's something so vibrant, so real, so beautiful about a child, and about how they talk. I love when I pick my kids up from school, and you know they're in the back seat, and they're having this chat. You know, these little kids having these chats. There's nothing more beautiful than that chat. There's something so pure about that. Why is that a problem? Why does that take you out of your world? The yeshivas bate knesios shel amei aretz, and the sitting in gathering places. Bate knesios is actually a reference to a shul, yeah. But the sitting in gathering places of amei haaretz, which means people who are ignorant, people who don't invest in I guess what we would refer to as the vertical expansivity, the concept of delving deeper into learning. People who are ignorant, they don't know things, they don't have an understanding of Torah. It says sitting in those places of gathering also has an effect to the extent that it takes you out of your world. All right. Before we go and try and evaluate them, I want to just give context here. The concept or the terminology of Moitziin es ha'adam min ha'olam has been used before. I'll give you another example. It says, Kina, kavod, and taiva, Moitziin adam min ha'olam. Kina is jealousy, taiva is desire, and kavod is the pursuit of honor. Remove a person from their world, which means if a person has jealousy, when essentially they're never going to be satisfied with what they have, and thus they're never going to be existing in their world. My daughter, I saw yesterday, she was watching a YouTube of a certain girl who has hundreds and hundreds of these dolls, these collector dolls. And my daughter has 2 of them. She got one for her birthday, and her grandparents bought one from Australia. So she says to me, Daddy, look, this girl is rich in dolls. She's rich in dolls. So and she's mum is rich in dolls. Like, she's sitting there with like these thousands of dolls everywhere, all of the things, all of the different aspects that come with it. So I said to her, Dina, you know what the definition of rich is in the Torah? It's hasameach bechelke, when you're happy with your lot. and we spoke about it, and she got it. We spoke about, like, you know, how this girl could have thousands of dolls, but if she's always thinking, what more do I need to get, and what else don't I have? And you have $2 and you're happy and you really love your $2, then you're richer than she is. You have more than she has. And that's the concept that kina, that jealousy, takes you out of your world, because essentially you're not living in the world if you have jealousy. And that's the same when it comes to desire. A person's relying on something external to them to experience life. And the concept of honor is obviously relying on other people to experience a sense of self. Now, anyone who has those three things, we understand, is essentially not living, because they're constantly tapping into something external to them to try and give them life. And thus the essential life that's there has been removed. So now, in context, those three things that we just mentioned make total sense. But how do we understand morning sleep, midday wine, children's talk, and sitting in the assemblies of the ignorant? How do those things place or take us out of our world? So I'm going to ask you guys if you can share with us if anyone has any ideas here. We have some very, very, very distinctive individuals with lots of creativity, lots of spiritual depth, and we would like to encourage you to give us some insight here. Maybe we'll start with, who's there? Audrey.
Rabbi, sleeping in, my favorite thing, not called laziness.
Excellent, good. You're saying these are code activities. These are code activities. Very good. So you're saying sleeping in is not sleeping in itself. Sleeping in is a reference to laziness. That if a person is lazy, if a person is, so to speak, infected by laziness, then they're going to be removed from the world. They're going to be removed out of their world. They can't tap into their world. Okay, very, very good. So you're saying there's a code word here, yeah, Audrey?
Because who are they sleeping in for? Because if they don't, it's not for Hashem. So if they don't get up, what is their purpose in life? So one thing is a combination that affects every other part of your life, which affects your being.
Good, good. Okay, thank you for sharing. Very nice. Anyone have another interpretation here? Why is morning sleep so problematic?
So I wonder also, I mean, obviously somebody might sleep in because they're lazy, but also excessive sleep is associated with depression. So somebody who is kind of removed from the world, doesn't feel like they're part of the world because they're depressed, maybe sort of oversleeping would be a symptom of something like that.
Very nice. Very good. So it's interesting. Yes, Philip.
What about the men's obligation to daven in the minyan and a certain cut of time to say the Shema and daven Shachrit? If you're sleeping till 11:30, how does that get fulfilled?
Excellent. So that's the opinion of the Rabbeinu Yonah. And we can understand that on a simple level, that when a person sleeps in, obviously they're squandering. So that's exactly what the Rabbeinu Yonah says. He says, Shemavateles hatfila bizmana, that a person loses out on the experience of the morning meditation and the morning calibration through prayer. Yes, definitely, that there's an aspect of, we know that there's a halacha that a person needs to say the Shema at a certain, by a certain period of time. And it's the time that people are still waking up. So once everyone has already woken up, then you can't say the Shema anymore. There's a lot of depth in understanding that. We don't have the time to do it now. But yeah, definitely, that a person's going to be squandering that opportunity to say the Shema in the appropriate time. Okay, there is a lot of depth to what you've just mentioned, Philip. Is, you know, we could very easily take that as just a tick. You know, I missed out on the tick here in the morning. We have to understand that Judaism is not about ticks. Okay, Judaism is about real essential calibrations and changing or coming into the deeper self, and it's not about ticks. Okay, so now let's try, and I want to come back to what Joe was saying. and understand what is the relationship between depression and laziness and sleep. What is sleep? Why do we need to sleep? So
to recharge your body, basically. You can't do without it.
yes, and
But you don't need to sleep excessively.
yes, I would add to that in the sense that it's not only to recharge your body, but it's very much so to recharge your mind. And the Kabbalists say that sleep.
Well, that's the same.
Yeah. And the Kabbalists say on the most essential level, it's actually there to recharge your soul. It's one of the most spiritual things a person can do. Now, if you think about what a person's doing during sleep, is that they're totally nullifying themselves. They're entering into the no zone, meaning it's just completely the state of nullifying. We almost have to coax ourselves into nullifying ourselves at night. It's very hard to switch off our mind. It's very hard to switch off our bodies. It's very hard to switch off our emotions. And thus there's an element of nullification that's taking place through the sleep. Okay? So now, why is that associated with depression? Why does a person who's depressed want to sleep in?
Basically, to escape from the world.
Exactly.
Withdrawal activity, Rabbi.
Exactly. Yeah.
Withdrawal from whatever's suppressing the depressed individual.
Yes.
An attempt to withdraw.
Yes. So I think I think Hilton's really opened it up for us, the Mishnah here, because if we look at all of these activities, these are all activities of escaping. All of these activities are forms of escape. Okay, so sleep is a very, very important act or important state of being, in the sense that you're not being. And that's a very important state to be in, to recharge and to, readjust the inner self. Now, all of these things can be taken into the negative. And this is what the rabbis speak about. All of these things that we mentioned, sleep is vital. If a person doesn't have a sufficient amount of sleep, that they are in a very dangerous spiritual place. Depression stems from not sleeping enough. Anxiety stems from not sleeping enough. Sleep is fundamental. It's a very, very important state. It's also interesting to note, and I saw this in a number of opinions, that wine is also a gift. It's a spiritual gift, wine. In a sense, I know you don't drink wine there, Philip. I'm sure there's a few more. Actually, I don't think anyone else on this group doesn't drink. Philip, you are a black sheep here. So here it says that that wine is actually a gift, and I saw in a number of places. I was almost shocked to see this. A number of rabbinic sources were from a while back were speaking about when a person wakes up in the morning, they're a little bit depressed and a little bit overwhelmed, sometimes. And to have a sip of wine is sometimes a beneficial thing in order to get themselves in the mental state, to calm themselves, to start the day. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should be drinking in the morning. I'm really not. But under certain, certain frameworks and certain, guidelines, if a person does things responsibly, has a bit of a sip of wine, it says there in a number of the opinions, just to get the mind stopping to worry so much and get into the mode of the day, into the flow of the day, then there is something allowed there, which I was very, very interested to see there. The rabbis really, and from here, they understood. That's why it's midday wine, not the morning wine and not the evening wine, when a person's sometimes struggling to relax or struggling to go to sleep, to have a little bit of wine, and a person might, include a number of other aspects or things to engage with. you know, you can have the whiskey or whatever it is to calm yourself down, to get a little bit. But when it comes to the midday means if you're drinking midday, it means that you're drinking because you're trying to escape. Okay? And escaping is dangerous. Escaping is essentially saying, I don't want to be involved in my life. I don't want this. I want something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sleep in because I actually don't want to wake up. I don't want to be involved with this. There's too much going on. I just want to sleep. I don't feel like being present in my life now. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm going to drink some wine and it's going to knock me out, or it's going to give me a completely different place to be in. All right? That's very, very different from having wine in the morning, a sip of wine just to get yourself going, or a sip of wine in the evening just to calm you down, in having it in the middle of the day. Yeah. Then what's really interesting is children's talk. What is children's talk? What's the element of children's talk? Anyone want to give a suggestion here?
There's a simplicity to it and pureness to it.
And how do you think it, thank you, Gary, how do you think it taps into context here?
It's like lifts one out of the, mundane or the physical. I don't know, it's like ethereal. It's
yeah. Okay, any other suggestions? Yeah, Joe?
Maybe there's also like a naivety about it that doesn't actually reflect the real world that you're in. Like your children are very sort of imaginative. They don't understand the stresses of really, they don't have the context for it. So if you become really absorbed in that, you're kind of removing yourself from the reality of maybe difficult situations or something like that. It's easier to be part of their very naive, gentle place rather than like a world that might be quite difficult.
So what's the alternative? Do we have to, it's like, it's the way that people are brought up, life isn't fair, the world sucks, the world is a negative place, what's the alternative? Does that mean that, we've been speaking about the concept of chokhmah, the concept of wisdom, being a naivety, meaning that a person in their greatest wisdom almost possesses a state of naivety. That it says by Yaakov, he was an ish tam. He was naive. On the other hand, he was the most wise individual. It says that he was the pillar of Torah. So very, very, very knowledgeable individual. But the highest state of wisdom is the state of naivety and simplicity. So so I think you're right in saying that's what children possess here. And to a certain extent, maybe we'll suggest the following. And I guess, again, I'm working through this together with you. All of these things are essentially very, very dangerous. Why are they dangerous? Because they possess an appearance of a spiritual consciousness. And they can suck you in very deeply. So, I was speaking to an individual who is struggling with actually limiting the amount of alcohol that they consume. And when they consume alcohol, they consume it to an extent where they really, really take it beyond the necessary limit. And the understanding there is that when engaging with that act, why does a person do it? And the understanding that we had was that a person has this almost desire to completely nullify themselves, to completely put themselves in a situation where they've just got nothing, no thoughts, nothing. They completely nullify themselves. Now, the danger of that is that a person is, number one, using something that's external to them to experience that. And number two, it can become the spiritual anchor or the spiritual vice. And essentially, all of these are vices. All of these are spiritual vices. Sleep is a spiritual act. It's one of the most lofty things a person can do. But if you're now going to abuse it, you're not going to use this in an appropriate way, but it's going to become a vice for you, that every time you're not feeling attached, or every time you're just going to, had enough of this world, you're going to go and escape through sleep, then, and you're not going to tap into the deeper processes of how one can do that, and one can, reestablish an inner place of silence, in a place of peace, then you're essentially in a danger zone called I'm not living in this world. And same too, when it comes to utilizing or engaging with any forms of narcotics or alcohol, to the extent that it removes you from this world, and that's what you're using it for on a general basis, is a great danger in that. And same too, when it comes to simplicity, that's a spiritual act. But a person can almost get into a real state of ignorant simplicity, like a child, and they can lose themselves as well. I'll give you an example of that. What is the chatter of children? So what are my kids speaking about? So my son's talking about his wrestlers. He's obsessed with these figurines, these wrestler figurines. My daughter loves these dolls, and that's what they're speaking about. Now, to a certain extent, humanity does that in a very, very big way when they're trying to escape their lives. What do they start doing? They start chattering like children in their head. Oh, I can get this, I can go buy that, and I can have these imaginations and these thoughts and these things that I'm going to pursue. And they essentially aren't present in their actual state of experience of life. They're in a la-la land of thought and imagination, which is simple, but it's not the essential simplicity of spirituality that brings you into the simplicity of now, into the simplicity of our experience of now. Not bombarded by thought, just simple, not worried about things around, just simple in the state of being of now. Okay, and that's the danger of the Mishnah here. What it's saying here: be careful about the idle or the chatter of children. There's something very powerful in it. There's something very beautiful in it. But understand that it shouldn't be it for itself. It needs the simplicity needs to be harnessed in a different spiritual sense. Okay, I'm not sure, did that make sense to everyone? Okay, so then let's have a look at the last one here. Sitting in the assemblies of the ignorant, okay, put someone out of their world. In the assembly of the ignorant, okay? Anyone have a suggestion here? What do we need to know to understand this? What does it mean to sit in the assemblies of the ignorant? Yeah, anyone have a suggestion? It's a hard one.
Probably sitting in a bar and talking nonsense.
Yes, very good. But 1 second, it does come into to drinking a little bit there, Hilton. But you're saying just talking nonsense, chatter. Yeah, Philip?
We learned the other day that if you're sitting with more than 3 people, 3 men, and you're not talking Torah, then that's not advice. So this can't possibly fall into that category. Where assemblies of ignorant men are sitting and discussing what we learned last week.
Yes.
Which should be words of Torah if there are more than 3 of you.
Yes. I just brings to mind, in Israel, one of the most beautiful things. I don't know if it was beautiful, but there's something called the I guess it's the corner. I forget the terminology, but as I would walk to yeshiva, I would see all of these older men, all been through the army, older, whatever age you're in this, 70s, 60s, 70s. And they would sit there, at these cafe shops every single day, playing backgammon, smoking, and almost like screaming at each other, having the time of their life. And there was something very powerful in that, and something very depressing at the same time. Yeah, something very depressing at the same time. And what we have to understand here is there is another very, very powerful energy that needs to be sometimes utilized, just like wine needs to be utilized, just like sleep needs to be utilized, and just like simplicity needs to be utilized. There is a very, very powerful energy in chatting. And I actually saw that in the sources, in actually just connecting to someone, chatting. And I can tell you personally, you know, when I was very much growing in my own spiritual journey, I would have issues chatting with people. You know, I couldn't waste time. Like I didn't want to just chat. I didn't want to just have an idle discussion with someone. But what we're seeing here, and obviously what that is you want to connect deeply to someone. You don't want to just, you know, how's your day, what's going on. But to a certain extent, Hashem has given the energy of chatting to also assist the person in coming into a spiritual state of being. It's a very fascinating concept, and you know, you hear it more with women. Obviously, there are men that do it as well. But you know, to have a chat with your friend on the phone, just to chat about your day, talk, engage, connect. There's something very powerful about that. Very, very powerful and very necessary. A person needs to have someone that they chat with. A person needs to have someone that they can have a friendly discussion with, or just a chat, just to unload, just to chill out, just to joke. And that's why it's also important in the circumstances that people find themselves in, you know, currently, to also engage with, you know, some form of just not being so serious all the time. Being serious all the time is not a valuable thing. You know, the King Solomon said, Al tiet tzaddik harbe, don't be so overly righteous. You know, don't be so serious. It's important not to be so serious. On the other hand, a person can very much abuse this element, and they can create a gathering place for chatter. And that's a very dangerous thing. That's a dangerous thing, that when certain aspects of our engagement with life becomes a gathering place for chatter, and we're using chatter as our essential selves, not as just a sip of wine, so to speak. That's what chatter needs to be, a sip of wine, but we're getting drunk on it, and it's becoming our essential state of existence. That's a dangerous thing. That's what takes you out of your world. And this is, if we were to really understand this Mishnah, it's all about escaping. This Mishnah is all about escaping. It's all about escaping into a deeper spiritual state. You know, when it speaks about getting high, why does it use the terminology of getting high? Getting high is a form of vertical expansivity. You're actually almost tapping outside of yourself. Now, the danger with it, if it becomes anything more than a sip of wine, and again, all of these things are forms of getting high. Sleeping is a form of getting high. The drink of the wine and the simplicity, or even the chatter that a person can engage with, you're getting high from that. It needs to stay as a sip of wine, and it also needs to be at the right time, which we learn out from the midday wine. It can't be at the wrong time. Meaning, if you have an opportunity to connect to something deeply, and now you're going to squander it by chatting and by engaging with idle chatter, well, that's a dangerous thing. And if you can really achieve something like meditation in the morning through prayer and through connecting to the deeper self, and you're just going to be sleeping, wow, you really missed it. Hey, you've really been infected by a very dangerous drug, you know? And I think this is the deeper aspects of this Mishnah. Anyone want to say anything or ask any questions? Okay, so let's conclude with a couple of lines from the Rabbeinu Yonah, and we'll see if we can understand them in context as well. So he says, Yain shel tzaharayin. Why is the wine of the afternoon so problematic? Shemevatel Talmud Torah umevi lidei avera. The reason why it's so problematic is because it is a form of nullification of the study of Torah, which means you now won't be able to work on the essential aspects of simplifying life through the study of Torah, and it'll bring you to sin. Why will it bring you to sin? It's a very powerful concept if you understand it. Why will it bring you to sin? So listening carefully. This is, again, if anyone has any suggestions here. Why, when a person is mevatel Talmud Torah, meaning they stop the study of Torah, why is it going to cause you to come to sin? Anyone have a suggestion here? And then I'll answer your question there, Audrey.
May I try?
Yes, Jenny.
First, I want to apologize for being so late this morning.
Okay.
Well, if you're not doing Torah, it's what can you put in instead? Because a person is always active, and the choices of what you're going to put in instead when you're in that state is what the problem is.
Excellent, Jenny. Excellent. That's exactly it. You see, what Torah is doing is it's almost essentially getting us high. It's actually a high, but it's a high that's created through work, through investing in the self, from deeper work that's taking place in the self. It's almost like, very not parenthetically, but very, very much a small glimmer of what Torah can give a person is the high a person gets from exercise. When you exercise, and that's why we're saying how important it is to exercise on a daily level, minimum 20 minutes, we're seeing that a person can actually experience a high from that type of exercise. Same to Torah is a high. Now, if you're going to be using wine to get you high, it's going to cause you to stop learning Torah, because you're going to say, here it is, very easy. I'll get a bottle of wine, pour myself some wine, drink it, tastes nice if I like wine, and finito. We're going to log off momentarily because we only have a minute left. If you want to come back on to finish off, you are invited to do so. We'll probably only have 5 more minutes. But for those that aren't, it's been beautiful to see you and beautiful to learn with you. But essentially, we'll conclude for those that aren't coming, if we can also dedicate this for Moshe Aaron ben Leah HaKoyen, that he should have a refuah shlema. And then we'll answer your question, Audrey, and that is, what time is sleeping in? Sleeping in really is, firstly, if you're a morning person, you can achieve things in the morning. I think that, no, you're saying you're not a morning person. So then you have really the time frame called Soif Zman Kriya Shema. So look up what time Kriya Shema is, the Soif Zman, the end time to say Kriya Shema. It's generally around 9, something around that line. There are specific times that are mentioned online. You can just look it up. But that's called sleeping in. If you're unable to say Shema on time within that time frame, then that's a serious sleeping in that needs to be evaluated. It means go to sleep earlier and also infuse life with, not as Jenny was saying, filling it from without, but filling it from within, and then you'll be able to wake up much earlier. You'll have a vivacious type of experience that you want to wake up and experience life. I mean, the morning is the most beautiful time. I woke up yesterday quite early and went for a walk on the promenade, and the sky and the air and just the vitality that's in the morning is very powerful, and it's powerful because of that. It's a time of essence life. Why are we